Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Ursula Wojciechowska, and I'm the president of Women in World Trade. We are a relatively new group, having been formed in February of last year, but we're very happy to report that in spite of the pandemic, we've already grown to over 200 distinguished ladies involved in international trade. This is our first program for the fall, and we are in for a big treat. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping points. This program is being taped and will be available on the Women in World Trade YouTube channel later this week. Please post your questions in the chat box. And if you'd like any more information about us, please visit our website or contact us by email. Our moderator today is Christa Bleyleben, Managing Director, MassGlobal Partners, and Women in World Trade Board Member and Membership Committee Chair. She'll be introducing our distinguished panel today. Christa, over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ursula, and welcome to everyone. I'm really thankful to all our speakers that have volunteered their time. Innovation, I think, is everywhere, and startup and innovative business and entrepreneurship. And so I think it's fantastic that we have a lot of women that are also CEOs and running companies. And so we thought we would bring to you today a program that lines up 4 terrific women calling in from different continents. So we have here with us Nancy Briefs, who is CEO of AltrixBio, Bettina Hein, who is the founder and also board member of Pixability and now CEO of Juli Health. Then Arantza Muriana from Spain, who is a co-founder of Biobide. And Sandra Zumfort, who is calling in from the Netherlands today, who is the owner and president of packaging company JASA. So the way I think we should run this is I will let all the speakers introduce themselves because they can tell their story much better than I can tell. So we will start with self-introductions. I want to know what is your entrepreneurial journey, but also what is the company that you're running? What does the company do? And what have been your initial experiences in your entrepreneurial journey? So we can take a couple of minutes each to do that. And then we have a couple of questions that we will run through. And I do encourage the audience to use, as Ursula said, the chat function to ask questions, but also the panelists should feel to ask questions to each other. So without further ado, so let me just introduce myself. I'm Christa Bleyleben. I'm an entrepreneur in some way as well, but I have a background in finance. I was a foreign exchange trader and had several functions in banking. Then I did a little discourse into public sector. I was running the Massachusetts Office of International Trade and Investment, which is the international arm for Massachusetts and in charge of attracting international businesses to the Commonwealth, but also to help companies go international from Massachusetts. But for the last 12 or so years, I've been affiliated with the Cambridge Innovation Center here in Kendall Square. And I'm helping international early and mid-stage companies figuring out how to access the US market. We help them with training programs. We help them with connecting them to the right resources. We help them how to find funding sources. And so basically bring them to the next level. We run programs for international governments and organizations from Spain, where I met Arantza, to Lithuania and many other locations. So that's in a nutshell about myself. And so I've met all our panelists over the years and would like to please give it the microphone now, perhaps to Nancy. You want to start? I'm going by the line of how I see you lined up here.
Good. Thank you very much, Christa, and good afternoon to all the participants today. I'm Nancy Briefs. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My entire career has been in life science, and I'm on my 7th startup. So my husband says I'm serially crazy, but I love the early stage translational work. Most of my technologies have come out of academic centers. I'm an MBA by training. Of my previous 6 companies, I did 1 IPO, 3 exits, 1 that's still commercial and 1 that failed in the clinic. So I have pretty broad experience. I've raised, including an IPO, 500 million in my background, and I've sat on 9 corporate boards as an independent board member. And I'm very excited about my current company, AltrixBio. I'm a co-founder, and this is technology that came out of Mass General Brigham. And we have a new solution. I'm getting feedback. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
But I think everyone should be on mute, I believe, right?
Okay, good. Thank you. So we're working on a new drug that we call Lucy for luminal coating of the intestine, which is an old drug, sucralfate, that we've repurposed to use as a metabolic drug for people with obesity, type 2 diabetes, and liver disease such as NAFLD. And so we've taken an older drug, reformulated it, and we create this temporary paste so that you take an oral pill before you eat, and then we move the absorption of food and nutrients further down the GI tract. And we've shown in preclinical animals that we can blunt the glucose curve, improve GLP-1 and GIP and insulin sensitivity. So we are about a year away from phase 1 human studies, just have received issued IP. So we actually got patent on composition of matter, which is exciting for us, even though we're using a drug that we know has a 30-year safety history. And I've worked with Christa on many programs for international companies in the past with both she and her team. So I'm very excited to participate today. Thank you, Christa. Christa, you're on mute still.
Sorry for that. Next on my line is here Arantza, calling in from, I think, San Sebastian, probably, right?
Exactly. I'm in San Sebastian currently. So thank you very much for inviting me here also, Christa. As she mentioned, I'm from San Sebastian in the north of Spain, in the Basque region. I was the co-founder and R&D of a company, a biotech company specialized in giving services, a CRO, contract research organization, specialized in preclinical services in Zebrafish as an alternative animal model to go faster in the candidate selection and going faster to clinical trials. So we had, before we decided to move to US, we had 5-6 years of history already, and we saw that we had clients worldwide, but being in Spain, in a small village, make us smaller. So we knew we had clients already in US, and we decided to move to Boston because it's the place to be if you are working for pharma and biotech companies. So we moved to the CIC and we opened an office there. And I was opening the office for 2 years in Boston, where we approached our clients, but we also make possible to increase our clients in US in more than 60%. So we keep working with them and making new clients, and we keep having the office in Boston, but the pandemic has made it difficult to keep the same track that we were having. So I hope that now that the visas are open, I can come back to Boston and keep doing the work that we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Bettina, are you here?
Absolutely.
Here we are.
So thank you so much, Christa, for inviting me. We've known each other for quite a long while. So I started my second company also at the CIC in Cambridge. I'm a lifelong tech entrepreneur. I've started with Juli, my third software company. all of the companies together have in common that they take large data sets and apply machine learning and AI to them to optimize for a certain outcome. I've led a quite transatlantic life since I was a child. So I came to the United States when I was 6, went back to Germany, went then to Switzerland, went to the US. Now I've split my time between Boston and Switzerland. So so that's a little bit why I think Christa thought I would be a good candidate for this panel. My first company was text-to-speech software, which we sold mostly into the automotive market, navigation market, and mobile devices. My second company, so first one is SVOX, second one Pixability, that Christa mentioned, is an advertising technology company that does video advertising optimization, mostly for YouTube and connected TV like Hulu and Roku. And the third one is Juli, which is a digital health company. We're a chronic condition care platform where we help people and their care teams manage their chronic conditions, specifically complex multifactorial conditions. We currently cover asthma, migraine, depression, bipolar disorder, and chronic pain, and are expanding that to autoimmune conditions, starting with rheumatoid arthritis. So I've moved a little bit between industries, but data and AI is the commonality there. So my first company, I raised 8 million for. I sold it for 125 million. For Pixability, I raised 28 million in equity, about 15 in debt. That one is profitable, on a nice path to an exit. And now Juli is just still very early pre-seed stage. We're going into seed stage and are about 14 people right now. So it's, I've started again and I love it. And my team is actually spread between 13 time zones.
Wow. Oh, amazing. Great. Thank you. And Sandra.
Hi, thank you so much, Christa, for inviting me. I'm excited to be on this panel. I think we met in 2018 at the CIC. The Dutch government organized a trip. The trip was called Explore US to find out what the best way would be to enter the US market. So my name is Sandra Zumfort, president and owner of JASA Packaging Solutions. It's a Dutch company from the Netherlands. My father started the company, so it's a family-owned company already 35 years ago, and established a big market in Europe. We have had distributors in the United States for 25 years already, but still we saw the chance to grow more. So that was a reason to join the Explore US trip. And after the trip, we decided to just go for it and open our location in the US. So we've been living in Richmond, Virginia now for 3 years. I brought my husband and 2 little kids, and we moved over, and it's been very successful. We've been so very happy to make the step and just go for it. And some more about the company. We build packaging lines. So for example, if you walk into a grocery store and you have a bowl, like a salad bowl that's ready to eat, there's usually pasta in there or potatoes, some lettuce, all the different ingredients. We build a packaging line that can fill the complete bowl with all the ingredients, all the exact weight. And then it's closed on the end of the line without any hands touching the product. So yeah, completely automating the packaging process. That's our specialism, and that's what we are bringing to the US market right now, together with a lot of sustainable packaging, getting rid of plastic packaging for what's possible. So that's in brief my story. And this is, yeah, I just rolled into a family-owned company. So this is just the company that I grew up with and I'm still working on in.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I think that actually leads, since all of you have international experience and you know, most of you worked internationally. I don't know about Nancy, but I'm sure you have international experience as well. But I would be interested to hear from you, having worked on both continents, what are the major differences running a company in, let's say, Switzerland or the Netherlands versus Boston or Virginia or other locations? And perhaps we'll just start with Sandra, since she's already just moved here a few years ago. What are the key differences? What do you think? Or are there any differences? Does it matter?
Well, I definitely loved the entrepreneurial spirit that you can feel around Massachusetts and Kendall Square and well, in the end, that's not the region we chose because it's not for our industry, I think the best region to be, but I never felt that entrepreneurial spirit in the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe. So that's a big difference. And then just starting up a company in a new country, that's I think that's like the other panelists can agree to that. It's just you have to figure out everything. For us, it was like a lot of things were new and things were going slower than we wanted to go. Like building up your client database and for example, the banking system, it's in Europe, it's totally different than in the US. So it's just a lot of things are different and new, but in the end, it's still just the same business and it's been running the same way. So in the end, it's not a huge difference for us.
Mm-hmm. How about Bettina? You're in a different sector. You worked on both continents and grow companies. Any major differences?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's certainly some differences. So my first one was in Switzerland, and the second one in Massachusetts. And what it's interesting when, so my first company was in the automotive field, and it was very interesting what our suppliers, our customers said to us when in the automotive industry, there were no customers for us in Switzerland, but they were obviously in Korea and in Japan, in Germany, other places in Europe and the United States. So when we got RFP'd by a company, they said, okay, we know to take you at face value as a Swiss company. We discount what the Americans say by 30 to 50%, and we up what the Japanese say by 20 to 30%. So that was really, it sort of shows how much, let's say, salesmanship is in the United States versus in other countries, right? Or saleswomanship, and there's and marketing. So things are somewhat inflated, and that's okay because people buy into the story. And I had to learn that. That's actually why after having my first company in Switzerland, I really wanted to come to the US because I always felt we were out-marketed by the Americans. And so that was, that's a difference. And it is a little bit pervasive in that. So one of the things that was very hard to get used to when I first came to the US was the flakiness of people. It's still shocking to me that people will cancel on you the last second. My first real shock moment was when I invited 8 people to a dinner party, and day of, 4 of them canceled. And I had bought everything, prepared everything. Maybe it was only 3, and I was so upset about this. And this was, less than a year into when I came back after having spent my childhood in the US, came back to Massachusetts. So that really sort of is, there are a lot of good things, the entrepreneurial spirit, the go-getting, the giving people a chance. That's also huge in the United States, because people will listen to you. There's always sort of the what's in it for me, right? There's much more of that in the United States than there is in other countries, but people will listen. People will be friendly. That doesn't mean that they completely like your product. It took me, for example, years to understand that when somebody says to you, let's have lunch, that means I don't want to see you again. I didn't understand that. And so I would always reach out to them. So when are we having this lunch? Anyway, I think it means good to see you, essentially, from afar. But yeah, so those are kind of the cultural translations that you learn. And for me, it's interesting. I went back to Switzerland with my husband and 2 kids 3 years ago, and sort of have my company now in Boston, and I'm here, and I really miss, I just miss that, the go-getter attitude and the optimism that comes with that. And here you're often people try to cut you down to size a little bit, and that's I don't know, that's everybody is cheering for you, at least seems to be in the US, and here people are a little bit more
reserved,
real. So
yeah. Anyone else? Nancy or Arantza?
I have a couple of comments. So in my career, I've often done early preclinical and clinical work overseas. And also for 7 years, I managed Europe out of the US. And the couple differences I noted is that I found, particularly in Europe, it's much more important to establish a rapport with your customers. In my case, it was, surgeons and cardiologists, because it was much more relationship based than in the US, where it tended to be more technology based, the connection. Mm-hmm. So I found, you needed to work very both scientifically and pragmatically, but also really get to know the customers much more than you needed to in the US. That was an observation I had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. How do you feel, Arantza?
Yeah, I totally agree with Nancy. So making business in Europe is more getting into the clients, knowing them, and generating a kind of personal relationship with them. In US is more difficult. And I think it's because in Europe we are more social and we give more importance to those relationships. But I would say culture in general is different, not only in the social life, but also in the entrepreneurial spirit, what I really miss from Boston. Everyone sees so positive being entrepreneurial, having many companies. In Europe, it's not so much value, or sometimes just people think you are crazy.
That happens in the US too. Yeah.
And this is also really supported by the government with grants from entrepreneurship, what in Europe is really missing. And in terms of money, in US, you have to multiply everything by 10. When you are asking for money here, asking for $1 million can be huge. And in US, you have to ask for 3 at least. If not, no one will listen to you. So you have to adapt this always. And banking is also so different. Being able to have a credit card seems like so difficult. So yeah, you need help with all these things, and I think that Christa's company makes a great job helping European companies like us getting into the US business, and we really appreciate the help. But more or less, finally, when you are working worldwide, the other things should be the same, and they are more or less the same. So
great, good observations. So that brings me into, another thought. I mean, all of you are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurship is exciting, but it's also difficult and unpredictable. I mean, I always wonder, like, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur as opposed to take a job at a big company where you get a certain paycheck every month and you get your health insurance and your retirement funds and everything, but you're taking a lot of risks by being an entrepreneur. What kind of, from which point on, when you were 5 years old, did you decide you become an entrepreneur, or what made you become an entrepreneur? I mean, I'm always fascinated by, like people, especially that do it over and over and over again. Nancy, you've done so many companies.
I'm crazy, yeah.
When did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
I know this sounds funny, but I think I was an entrepreneur my entire life. I was always looking at problems and thinking of better ways to do something, right? And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's that problem solving, making a difference, improving. In my case, I've spent my whole career lifelong in healthcare, but, making a difference for patients, et cetera. But even as a young child, I remember my mom said in first grade, they used to have, the telethons every September in the US, which was this charity thing where they would raise money and for muscular dystrophy. And I thought the group running it in my hometown was doing an awful job. So as a first grader, I went in and like revamped the whole program, right? And my mom was like beside herself, but it worked because I thought, there's a better way to do this. So for me, I'm always thinking about what can we bring technology wise, software wise, whatever it is, device wise, therapeutic, that can make a difference. And when you do that and you see the success of people's lives or their health being changed, it's really satisfying, and it's hard to stop because there's so much that could be improved. And so as an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking about how do we make something better or different. And I guess it's in my DNA. Once I finish one thing, I'm ready for the next one. So yeah. I think my whole life, probably, I just didn't recognize it. But like most people, I went to work for a big company after university. I started my career at Pfizer in New York and was in management development and just had a terrific experience there. And then I went to another big company, American Edwards, now it's Edwards Laboratories. It was part of American Hospital, and went through a management development program there. And then saw a problem in the ICU that I thought could be done better, and met some people that had an idea, and we started a company together. I was pretty naive at the time. I probably didn't even understand the risk, but I was young. I didn't have a family. I only had to support myself. So it did not seem risky at the time. Yeah.
Anyone else? Always an entrepreneur?
Yes, I started right after grad school. So my fallback option was that I would work at McDonald's if everything went south. That's what I thought. I was obviously also scared, but I come from a family where all of my grandparents were entrepreneurs in their own right. My grandmother was a pharmacist. My other grandmother had her own corner store. My grandfather sold coal at wholesale, and their grandfather was a chemist and invented ceramics and soft drinks and other things and brought those to market. So my parents are both in, my mom's a pharmacist as well, and my dad is a physician in private practice. So I didn't know anybody in my family that had a 9-to-5 job. So it didn't seem strange to me to do this. I still had to muster the courage, because my grandfather warned me about going in this direction. He actually said, get a job with the government, a civil service job, because he knew how hard this life can be and how volatile it can be. But I don't know, I didn't listen. So I still think he would be proud of me if he saw, what I've done today.
Yeah, that's great. How about Sandra? You come from a long line of family business. Was it always clear you would join the business?
Well, actually, I have a brother, and he did mechanical engineering, so he was like the first one to step into the company, but that didn't work out the way it was planned. So there was a chance for me. But yeah, growing up, I love to listen to the stories of my dad. We made some long road trips together, and then he shared all the stories he had as an entrepreneur and solving problems. I always loved to listen to their stories, and I wanted to have more. And I always knew I wanted to do something like he was doing. Didn't know if it was in our own company, but in the end it was. And the moment I said yes to the job that was available at that moment, I never had any regrets. And the only thing, I can never step back into a normal job now. So, but I think that's, everyone has said who has been an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's true. It's a common thread. Arantza, you always knew you would be with a startup or starting a company?
No. I knew that I wanted to help people solve problems. I think that Nancy mentioned skills are important, and I always trying to help and improve things and make things better. I'm very perfectionist, so I'm thinking that everything can be done better. And I like managing things and managing and organizing things. And I have in common with Bettina and Sandra also that my family has been entrepreneurship always. My grandfather was entrepreneurship. My father has his own company, and I've been helping him always. So when I started in pharmacy, I thought I would work for someone else. But then I realized that if I don't do myself, I have to be depending on others' work sometimes, and maybe it's less risky, but sometimes it's harder. So I decided to move forward and make it possible. And it's risky, but I'm happy with the decision.
That's great. That's great. So since you all run successful businesses, many of you have raised significant amounts of money. Bettina and Nancy and others in some ways. I'm just curious, there's a lot of discussion about venture funding for women versus men, how much more difficult it is. Has that been your experience? Or, do you say, doesn't matter if you have a good product, you get funded? What was your experience as a women's CEO going out and getting, raising money? Who wants to go first? Nancy?
Sure. It's an interesting question. I never know quite how to answer it because I've never raised money as a man, right? So, I mean, I don't know how it's different. I mean, honestly, I was very lucky to work with a startup team when I left American Hospital, American Edwards, that was acquired very quickly in about 3 years. It was a new type of oxygen monitoring that Sorensen, a division of Abbott, wanted. So I had a success right out of the gate, and that helped because first time C-suite jobs, I think, are always, it's always challenging to fund a CEO the first time, whether they're male or female. Is it harder if you're female? I don't know, but I suspect it could be. But if you've been on a team that's successful and you've made money for investors, I think that's really helpful. As well as, you know, even if you're the second in command, the COO, but you've been managing, you know, the P&L and the products and things, I think all of those help. I find that investors, at least in life science, which could be very different than tech, right? They're much more interested in your technology or your solution. And if the market for that is there, then I think they'll fund you. But that's been my experience. And I don't know that that's all, you know, I've read a lot that women have trouble raising money. I do a fair amount of mentoring and coaching. I think part of it is just understanding the process and also the language, right? VCs have their own language about how they want you to speak and ask questions and stuff. And if you understand what they're looking for and asking for, it makes it, I think, much easier as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's my perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's clear that the first time out of the gate, it's harder, regardless if you're a man or woman. And if, as you said, if you once you've made money, especially repeatedly, I think it's probably easier. And it's all about building also, I think, connections, you know, with the investment community, not just when you're desperate to raise money, but start well beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is harder as a woman. I mean, I've done it all of my career. And I'm one of the few lucky ones that made it through, you know, if you look at the numbers. But I've fundraised twice while pregnant. Very interesting experience. So I don't think men would be asked if they're still committed to the company. Wow. If they're adding a new member to their family and they're the breadwinner. So those are like shocking types of questions, or people that do invest and call you their social experiment.
Oh yeah.
Like that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've experienced it all. My second, so I tried to hide my pregnancy as well as possible, the first child. But with the second, that wasn't possible because it pops, as some of you may know. So I actually used that then to my advantage by pointing to that huge belly and saying, I'm cheap right now. So if you invest before I pop, then you get a discount. And it worked. I had several people want to come in, like people flew in. They're like, oh my God, her water's going to break. I have to invest before that. It was a real forcing function. So, you know, I think it's always about the jujitsu moves, right? You can also pull advantages out of that. Like I can wear this color at a pitch competition and a financing conference. If a man wore this color, they were like, oh my God, who is that, right? It wouldn't fit the VC mold, but I can do that. And so I stand out. That's an advantage in marketing your company. I can wear my company colors, right? So, you know, that is just something where, okay, what do I have that I can leverage? And I think that's a very entrepreneurial way of looking at it, you know, just using the sort of underdog, because if you're creating a company that's going against incumbents, same thing for being a woman, or if you have a very strong accent, let's say you have a strong Chinese accent and people don't understand you, that's the same kind of handicap, right? So you have to think about that. But I do still get mad when I see, you know, I obviously know a lot of other tech CEOs, and most of them are men, and some of them are really out of central casting, and they have no trouble at all, right? You know, they're huge former NHL players, you know, large, broad shoulders and have the swagger. Boom, they get financed. And, you know, I get asked all of the like really hard questions, but luckily enough, I like doing hard things. So that has not discouraged me.
That's a great story. So, Sandra, I mean, you, I don't know if you had to raise money, but you certainly work in machineries, which is a very perhaps male-dominated field. Do you find any problems being a woman CEO? Or is it an advantage?
Yeah, I think it helps making the conversation better. But still, if it goes to technical questions, I usually leave it up to someone else because one day we have people that know the technical parts better, and it's just I'm sorry. So yeah, it is a lot dominated by men. It's a lot of like stainless steel, big machines. Yeah, it's a man-dominated world, but I don't see it as a problem. It's still good to talk to everyone and be on the same level with everyone. So
yeah, that's great. And Arantza, did you feel? I mean, you've tried to raise money, you have raised money. Any
raising money, I didn't find it different or more difficult being a woman. Despite once I was also pregnant and they were looking at me like, would she be okay during the pitch? Yeah, but not with VCs or raising funding in this case. I would say the other way around. At least in Europe, being a woman, entrepreneur women is less common. So you are more unique and maybe they remember you more, or they even give some help to women that are doing these kind of things. So.
Okay, great. So we've got a couple of questions here in our chat box here. So here's a question for Sandra. Describing your business in automated packaging, you used a domestic example like salad bowls, but have you already, or are you contemplating trying to forge partnerships with logistics companies to provide packaging solutions for international shipments?
That's a good question. I have to get some more information about the question, what exactly we are talking about, because I think we are in, we are in food production, we're in food packaging. So all the products we pack is food, and especially fresh food products. So leafy greens, potatoes, carrots, onions, those type of products. And we try to pack it as local as possible. So with not too many food mileages. So I just have to get the question. I don't understand the complete question.
I think what the question means to ask is there are a lot of logistics businesses that may, I mean, the question is, who is your client? Is your client basically a supermarket chain or producer, or and would that be an opportunity with logistics companies? I think that's maybe what the question is.
Yeah, our customer is the supplier to the supermarkets. So, for example, leafy greens, there's Revel Greens, App Harvest, those type of companies. And I've been at Costco and talking about packaging alternatives for plastics, but still it's the supermarkets decide that they want to move to cardboard, for example, and then our customer is the supplier of the supermarket. So in the end, there is the investments will be made at the suppliers of the supermarkets. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm always open for having a chat about the logistics and talk further about that.
Okay, good. So another question is, and I think it's a very obvious one. I mean, you all are, entrepreneurship is not a 9-to-5 job. I mean, entrepreneurship is like 24/7. You all have families, you all have raised children. Some of you have still small children. How can you juggle family life with the demands of, being an entrepreneur that's always on call? And who has small children? Bettina, you have small children.
I do. Well, so they're not as small as Sandra's children, I think. Mine are 7 and 10. So they're in elementary school. Yes, it's a juggle, but I do have my husband, who is really a partner in equality. When they were littler, he actually worked for me at Pixability, was my CTO, and because CTOs don't always need to travel as much, he was able to be home in time to be with the kids. We had a full-time nanny. We had all of these different things. Actually, it's got a little bit more complicated in Switzerland, at least sort of from a social level, because people here guilt you about leaving your kids to be cared for by strangers. It's actually called stranger care, which is shocking. It's shocking. Like, they essentially bullied me now into having my son home on Wednesday afternoons, because they're like, he needs you more. You're the mom. Okay. Or we'll have to send him to a special school. Like, they didn't say that, but they intimated that. So I've always said that I was a gender discrimination refugee in the United States. And I'm glad I only went back after my kids had, Jacob, my little guy, was 4, where I didn't have to deal with this, let's say in German-speaking countries, mother cult. So that's, I'm glad I don't have to, I have a certain standing now in Switzerland, and I can do that. I have my own TV show, so people, at least respect me.
In Die Höhle der Löwen, or?
Yeah. I'm a judge on the Swiss version of Shark Tank, but cool. Yeah, that's my 1 week a year hobby when I'm in the studio. It's actually kind of fun. I think in the US it is just so much easier, because it's so much more accepted that you have a care team essentially for your children, and it's not, the moms give notice when they get pregnant, which was, like when my sister-in-law, who's my age, got pregnant 15 years ago, that's what she did. She gave notice because that was expected.
Yeah. And
so
I think
anyway,
Switzerland is especially very conservative in that regard.
Oh, Germany is even more conservative. So it's shocking still that it's still that way.
Yeah. Well. So
but anyway, I juggle it, and I'm happy for the pandemic, because my kids can come in and people are happy. I know it sounds horrible, but there are really some key advantages for me, that I can do my job from home, and I can be there for my kids right after I get off a speaking engagement, which I used to have to travel for and spend nights in hotels to do.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
I think actually the pandemic helped in have life a little, to some extent, more complicated, but to other extent it's more flexible. So I think
Yeah, teleworking is also an option that before was impossible, and that allows you staying with the kids too. I also have one of 6 and the other of 10. And actually, when I was pregnant of the second, they told me, but why are you having the second? You don't have time for your kids. So people in Spain also is more traditional than in US. And they don't understand why we want to involve in all those things when my husband could do it. But yes, I want to do it. My husband is also a good partner. He understands what I like and what I want to do. And it would be impossible to keep doing it because each time I was having the baby with 6 months, I have to travel to US to the conferences and attending clients. And it won't be doable without the support of my family and my husband. So, but yes, the kids also have a good example, and they see our mother is a woman that can do home things. She likes cooking, she likes staying with us, but she also likes working and traveling, and that's not a bad thing. I think it's really positive for them.
Yeah. And Nancy, you had 6 children, I believe, right? Is that what you told me? So
I do have 6, but my husband was a widower, so I inherited 4. But still, I'm the matron of the family. Yeah, I think it takes a village for sure, right? As well as a supportive spouse. I'm on the other end. Our youngest just turned 25, and I'm happy to report that we have 2 entrepreneurs out of the 6, and all of them graduated from college and now tell me how wonderful it was to have a mom that was working, right? And they got exposed to things that they really appreciate. So, and they're now starting to have kids, and it's been wonderful. But it did take a village. I mean, I had a nanny even when they were in elementary school, because I'd have to travel at the last minute and I needed to know that somebody was living in the house. My husband's a great support, but there's some things he just wasn't great at, like cooking, for example. So, you know, you just make it work. And I haven't done this in Europe, but I can tell you, at least in the Northeast, there is a great support system here that you can tap into. You know, there are enough working women that we share. You know, I shared my nanny eventually with another professional woman who was a CFO. Both our kids were in school full time, but we had someone that could cook for us and go between our houses. And, you know, it ended up working out really well. So you just got to get the right village around you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And honestly, I can say being a mom and organizing everything for your family and your activities and your childcare, I mean, it's great training for being an entrepreneur, right? Because you're balancing things all the time. I also have found much better work-life balance, even though my kids are, you know, on their own now with the pandemic. You know, I never would work at home remotely. And now just being at home to let a repairman in, you know, or do something has been really nice. And I'm struggling now with how much to go back to the office once this is over, because our team's been very productive, and most of them have younger families. And so I think that's going to be a big challenge for us as leaders, is how do we keep our company cultures advancing and growing, but still giving people a work-life balance that makes them happy and they want to be on the team, you know? Mm-hmm. It's a big question for me. I'm thinking about that a lot. Yeah.
I think we're coming up. I know Bettina needs to leave in 2 minutes, but just as a quick last question, speaking of pandemic, do you think the way we've adjusted to life in the last year and a half, do you think that's going to stay to some extent, or is it going to move back to the way before? Or what do you think the outcome is of the pandemic, how we balance work and life in general?
So I was able to build an all remote company now. And we are 50% women and people of color. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if not for this all remote model, because I can find people all over. We have people in Africa, we have people in the US, we have people in Asia. As I said, there are 13 time zones spanning between us. And I think that that's just a fabulous innovation. I used to be like Nancy, like everybody has to be in the same place, you know, creativity, we can do it like this. And I think that that's just fabulous. It's changed, you know, the whole game, at least for me professionally.
So there was actually a positive, despite all the you know, disruption that the pandemic caused. Actually, I think it's, you know, for work-life balance and what you said, being able to build a very inclusive team from different time zones, it's probably was a benefit. Yeah. Interesting. That's very good. Well, thank you, Bettina. You leave whenever you need to leave, because I know you have a sharp cutoff. Anyone else that wants to chime in? And thank you so much, Bettina, for joining us.
Yeah, sorry, I have to jump. I'm actually doing something for entrepreneurs right now. I'm on the board of the Center for American Entrepreneurship. And tonight we're lobbying lots of politicians in Washington, including Amy Klobuchar, to do more for entrepreneurship and immigration. So
oh, good.
I hope we can affect some change there.
Oh, great.
Thank you so much.
Good luck, please. We all want that. Yes, that's
awesome. Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks. Christa, I'm sorry, I've got another call too coming up.
So we're going to wrap this up. So thank you so much. I think this was really, really a fantastic conversation. We could go on for quite a bit more, but unfortunately time is up. So thank you all the entrepreneurs for joining us. And just as a last word, here we have upcoming events. So there's a networking event on October 21st at 4 o'clock. And invitations will go out. And then on November 3rd, a discussion with Lisa Wieland, who is the CEO of Massport, which manages not only the airport, but also the ports and bridges and so on. So that should be a very, very interesting conversation as well. So thank you all for joining us, and especially to our entrepreneurs, and have a virtual round of applause. Thank you.